1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Leave the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All of it.
One of resistance,
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Well, hello and welcome to Star Wars Reactions. We are so happy you're back to join us. We are going to have an awesome time tonight. It's so much to talk about, and I've been waiting for this discussion. So let's get the introductions out of the way so we can get started. My name is Aaron Harris, and joining me, making his triumphant return from his well-deserved vacation, he is the Kalnaka to my Basil, the David Motters. David, brother, welcome back.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me back. I love the little short version you did last week. I thought that was good, just kind of whet everybody's appetite. And you and I had talked about getting together because there's so much here and it's so rich. And so, we wanted to get together and do a proper recording for this, episode 7 of the Acolyte. And then, of course, do it for episode 8 as well. But I'm ready to react, really ready to react. And as always, excited to talk about Star Wars with you, brother.
Same here. I am so looking forward to breaking down some Acolyte with you tonight. It's going to be good. For those of you that weren't aware, David was on vacation last week, so we didn't get to really discuss episode 7, The Choice. It just was so rich, and there was so much that both of us wanted to say that we decided to just kind of hold it off a week till he got back from his well-deserved and enjoyed vacation so we could discuss it together. And that is what we're going to do. But before we do, I understand you had an interesting vacation, or at least an interesting flight home.
Well, I on Sunday, I'm at the airport, at Detroit Metro Airport. Is that what you want me to share?
Yes.
This was pretty cool. It ties into the Acolyte, quite frankly. But I'm sitting there, and I'm just waiting for a flight from Detroit down to Tampa, get back down here to Florida. And I'm kind of looking at everybody coming through. I'd already gone through security, and I keep looking over and just kind of people watching. And then I look over, and I'm like, oh, my God, that's Charles Soule, one of the luminous beings, one of the luminous authors of Project Luminous and the High Republic. And so I see him. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to get his autograph, because I haven't been able to get the celebration or get it. And of course, I don't have Light of the Jedi on me or any of his Star Wars comics. So I grab a piece of paper that I had gotten from the rental car company we used, Hertz, and I go running over, and I go over and I'm like, Charles, and he turns and looks. I said, hey, man, he's like, yeah. And I shake hands with him. And I'm like, man, I love your work in the High Republic. And can I get your autograph? And he's like, absolutely. And so he signs it. And Charles Soule, we are all the Republic. And he says, well, that's the first time I've ever signed a Hertz brochure. And I told him that. I said, man, of all the days I wish I had Light of the Jedi on me. But he was so nice to sign it. And I just wanted to let him be. He was with his wife and said hi to her. She was super sweet. And just let him go. I just, you know what I'm saying? You don't want to sit there. I wanted to ask him about the novel coming out a year from now that will wrap up the High Republic, but I thought I probably shouldn't ask him. So I know he's putting the finishing touches on it, but did that, sat down, flew home, and posted it, and then he responded. It was kind of fun. Some of his responses, you and Greg McLaughlin from the Rebel Base Car podcast saw his responses. And someone else had a really fun response talking about how Hertz is this intergalactic travel company now, and he said he'd have to call it, what is it, Hertz, like HOORTZ?
Yeah.
And sure enough, Greg McLaughlin, who is, you and I know, is just so quick, so dynamic with what we say, placards or signs. I'm looking at it right here on Twitter X. Hertz, let's go to a galaxy far, far away. So it was perfect. And so anyways, Wikipedia responded that they would do a page on it if he ever uses it. And I immediately texted you and Greg to let you know I'd met him. So that was kind of the Star Wars fun and excitement there. Never expected that to happen, but it was just fun. And again, really nice guy. I'm so glad I got to meet him.
Well, that was awesome. And that's why I wanted you to share it, because it was such a great opportunity for you to meet him and get to talk to him for a second. Because definitely, I know I know he was on both of our bucket lists. So you get to check that off. And it was such a great story too. And Greg, I love Greg McLaughlin. He is on the ball when it comes to graphics and stuff. And he wasted no time making up that Hertz sticker. Placard. Yes. It was perfect. So yeah, I had to have you share that, because, it is just a fun story. So
yeah.
Well, you ready to talk some Acolyte?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do this. Now, I will go ahead and tell you, since we are recording this later because David was on vacation, we're talking about episode 7 today, Choice. By this point, the 8th and final episode of the season has been released already. And David has watched it. I actually have not, because I wanted to keep my discussion on Choice undistracted by what happened in the finale.
Yeah.
So as of now, that we're recording this on like Wednesday night. So, and it's like literally 9 p.m. Wednesday night. So the finale's been out 24 hours and I have yet to watch it, which I think this is the longest I've gone without watching an episode of Star Wars that's been released. So, I'm kind of jonesing right now. But it's going to be fun. We're going to have a great discussion about Choice. And I've already told David, as soon as we hang up, I hang up the mic and start the editing process. Before I even start editing, I'm going to watch the finale and enjoy that. So, because I have not watched it. I've stayed off social. So if you've messaged us and haven't gotten a response, that's because I haven't watched the finale yet and I'm avoiding spoilers. So, all right. Well, let's go ahead and start our discussion on Choice. This episode, of course, released July 9th, 2024, directed by Kog Ong Ada, written by Charmaine DeGret, Jen Richards, and Jasmine Flournoy. Yeah. So, synopsis for this episode, straight from the episode guide there on the lovely StarWars.com. In a return to past events on Bryndock, Master Indara, her Padawan Torben, Wookiee Master Kalnaka, and Jedi Knight Soule are on a mission to locate a Vergence in the Force. Upon discovering the young twin sisters, Osha and May, and their coven of witches, Soule is compelled to intervene. He fears for the safety of the children, especially after the Ascension ceremony leaves May with a mysterious mark on her forehead. A shocking discovery about the twins' bloodline spurs a series of events that will change the course of each life on Bryndock that night. Convinced that the twins are his ticket home, Torben succumbs to his own anxieties and rushes back to the fortress, putting the witches on defense. And while they scramble to hold their coven together and protect the children, May sets off a blaze and a battle breaks out that pits Jedi against Jedi, leaving Torben disfigured. The carnage ends with most of the witches, including Mother Anastasia, dead, and the Jedi are left with a terrible secret.
Oh, yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, David, you have been away, and let's you kick this off, my friend. What are your initial reactions to Choice?
Yeah, I'd watched this last week, the night it came out, and then after that, I listened to a number of podcasts, but I'll say this, I really enjoyed this episode, really, really enjoyed it. And why, and I'll get around to the other podcast because of the deep, fascinating, rich issues that it brings to mind and what it brings up for discussion. And like I said, when I was in Michigan, I listened to several podcasts and I could hear their frustrations with the story, right? Was this really the shocking reveal it was built up to be, right? Compared to episode 3 to this episode 7. I've also heard some of them really struggle with, they're not really able to root for any protagonist, right? All 4 of the Jedi on Brendok, clearly you can see from this episode, made bad decisions followed by more bad decisions. But for me, I mean, look, all of us can nitpick, and there's issues I have with it and the story and some of those things, but there's a lot people can learn from this episode and really this series, about behavior, truth, right and wrong, good and evil. And I've put a lot of that into our talking points section, and we can explore those issues more fully. But for me, that's wonderful. And that's why I've had an excitement to record every week with you, and why I didn't want to miss last week, why you and I said, yeah, let's do this. Because there's so much to talk about. And it's just rich, deep, fulfilling. And I'm excited to get into it with you. But what are your initial reactions?
Well, I kind of gave everybody a sneak peek of my reactions last week when I did the update announcing we were going to push off this discussion till next week, or till this week, I should say. But for me, I understand where you're coming from. I haven't listened to a lot of the podcasts. I am running way behind on my podcast catalog. I'm about 2 weeks behind right now, so I haven't had a chance to listen to any of the discussions on Choice. But I mean, I can understand where they're coming from with frustrations with the story and frustrations with who to root for and this and that. But at the same point, I said it last week, and I think I said it the week before. We're dealing with, despite it being a very predictable story, because everything has been very predictable to date through this series, predicting how things are going to go. We kind of figured things would happen a certain way, and they are, and it's been pretty predictable. It was predictable Kymar being the stranger, predictable that the Jedi probably killed everybody. It's been predictable. Mm-hmm. But despite the predictability of the story, I have thoroughly enjoyed the execution of the story. The episodes have been incredible. The acting has been great. The action, the special effects, the music, everything about it has been incredible. And to me, that kind of excellent execution outweighs the predictability of the story. And I think a reason that the predictability of the story doesn't bother me so much is growing up, I watched so many movies and so much TV to the point that about 95% of the time I could sit down and start a movie I've never seen, and in the first 5 minutes I can tell you how it ends. Because I'm just I've been a student of filmmaking. I love it. So I can usually tell you how something is going. It's very rare for something to trip me up. I can honestly say the last thing that probably tripped me up movie wise was The Sixth Sense. Never saw that one coming. Yeah. I see dead people. Yeah, dude, you're dead. Never saw that one coming, but I'm usually pretty good at calling things out. So with that being said, the predictability didn't bother me, which is probably why I've enjoyed the series so much, because I'm used to things being predictable for me. I don't know, but I have thoroughly enjoyed this series, and I like this episode. I like the flashback. I love the 2 flashback episodes. This one it was episode 3, I believe it was.
Yes.
Where we got to see more of Indara and Kalnaka and Torben and young Saul. To me, it's been great, because we're talking about 3 of these 4 Jedi were dead within the first 2 hours of the series, which was very disappointing for me, to say the least. But I have thoroughly enjoyed these flashback episodes, and I enjoyed this one just as much. Like I said, I think you and I have talked about this. This episode played out exactly how I expected it to. I expected every plot twist in this episode. I kind of called before they happened. And everything happened. It's quote Palpatine. It all has happened as I have foreseen, because it has. But it hasn't taken away the enjoyment for me, because I've thoroughly enjoyed watching what I see in my mind come to life.
Yeah,
and it's been great. And so, I love it. I've loved everything about it. I've loved the acting. Saul has just done, the actor who plays Saul has just done absolutely incredible. Lee Jung Jae is just killing that role. He's just, the complexity of the Saul character is just incredible for me. So, my initial, I'm going way past what I should for my initial reactions, but needless to say, I thoroughly enjoyed the episode, because it just, I don't know, it hit me on all levels, from music to story to acting to effects to the feels. It gave me the feels. So
yeah.
So let's move into some of our talking points here, because I know there's a lot of issues, and you mentioned in your opening remarks, I commented on it too, but the focus on the story aspects and the bigger issues that are occurring in the story. Like you mentioned, some shows and reviews are focusing on the story, which definitely can be an issue. But how have you felt really about this? Are you struggling on the story, or are you looking at the bigger, deeper issues that this story is bringing up?
Yeah, that's what I'm focusing on. That I found myself, you and I've talked before. We've podcasted for a long time. We really have, and sometimes it's not easy to do this. All the podcasts that you and I love and respect, like CWK. Rebel Base Card podcast, it's not easy to produce this and to record and find time, balance family. All of those podcasts, you and I, we all have to balance family and work and all of that. I have not had any issue with getting motivated or excited about talking about this, because of the deeper issues, the bigger issues this brings up. I didn't have as much of excitement each episode for Ahsoka. There's much more depth here for me to talk about, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like I had mentioned before, and let me get into some of these bigger, deeper issues, and just to get our listeners to think. That's what my professors in graduate school, when I was getting my graduate degrees, they always talked about that. They would challenge our thoughts, get us to think. And I would encourage our listeners, as I go through all of this, is be comfortable with cognitive dissonance. If I say some things that challenge how you see the world or how you think about things, that's okay. Mm-hmm. People challenge how I think about things. And Aaron knows this, and anybody who's listened to my Psychology Corners in the past or Psychology Factoids, is I've encouraged people to be okay, sit in the dissonance, sit in the discomfort. It's okay. And, you can agree with what I say, disagree, that's fine. Aaron has talked many times about how, some people like Ahsoka more than Acolyte. Some people like Acolyte more than Ahsoka, or whatever it is. There's more series coming out, Skeleton Crew, etc. But just be patient and hear me out. I hope what I say is helpful, insightful, can challenge your thoughts, get you to think. And like I've said forever, if I say things that are helpful, take them, keep them. If I say something you're like, you know what, I completely disagree with Dave, that's okay. Toss it. That's what my professor said, right? Mm-hmm. Take what helps, toss what doesn't help. So again, this series has got me really thinking about the big issues like good and evil, like free will or determinism, right? The title of this episode, choice. Is there right or wrong? What's right and wrong? Are the Jedi right? Are the Jedi wrong? Are the witches right? Are the witches wrong? And it also has gotten me thinking about ultimate truth, or what we call moral relativism, okay? And so I'm going to start with, if it's okay with you, buddy.
Go right ahead.
All right. The first big one, and I've hit on this before, and I thought I would, this massive issue, and I thought I would kind of present a few more thoughts that I've had, particularly after I watched this episode. I went to bed and I just was thinking and thinking and thinking. And so I've been looking at free will and determinism, for over 30 years of my career, particularly when it comes to human behavior. So, I think, Aaron, you might remember me saying this. I had one major professor, Dr. Douglas Barnett, he was on my master's thesis committee, my doctoral dissertation committee, and Brian Lakey, he was on both of those as well. But Dr. Barnett said we have free will, and made an argument for it. Dr. Brian Lakey said, well, it appears like we have free will, but it's more determinism. And so let me kind of play this out a little bit and get people thinking. Let's give some examples of each, free will or determinism. Let's start with determinism. I've mentioned this before. This is a statistic from a book called To Own a Dragon, Reflections on Growing Up Without a Father. And in the back of the book, it gives just staggering statistics about boys and girls who are raised in fatherless homes. And the statistic is this: 85% of males in prison were raised without fathers, right? So I've talked to men in my office who were raised without fathers. They're in the 15%. And I said, it is incredible that you are not dead and you're not in prison. And they kind of look at me and they're like, whoa. And I'm like, absolutely. I mean, the 85% is not 100%, but that is a staggering number to basically show determinism, that if you're a male and you don't have a dad, it's almost determined that you probably will end up dead or in prison, and more likely in prison. That's staggering. Now, again, people can argue, well, it's not 100% determinism, Dave, because it's not 100%, it's 85%. But let me go on. I started thinking about this last Tuesday night after I watched this episode up in Michigan, and I was just laying there. I watched it before I went to bed, and I closed my eyes. And I started thinking about how, well, in America, we're not in India. They have a caste system there. Let me throw some stuff out to you. Let me get our listeners thinking, Aaron, right? So this is a massive psychology corner. This is Psychology Factoid. But I was laying there and I'm like, wait a minute. If Aaron, if me, if our listeners, have our listeners think about this, Aaron. If you got a raise, will that change where you are status-wise, or like we talk about upper income, middle income, lower income, and we can talk about the wealthiest people. Are you going to move out of the kind of the bracket you were born in? Because I think, in Michigan, I was born probably Aaron, solidly middle class. My dad's a teacher. My mom's a nurse. Even my wife and I were both employed. We're both well-educated, very thankful for that. But here's the deal. I'm not moving up to where the Kardashians are, or the wealthiest people in Hollywood are, or the old money that you see in the Miami area or in New York City or whatever. I'm never moving up to that. It's not happening, And I sat there and I was saying to myself, Aaron, again, after watching this episode, maybe Dave Motters lives in a caste system. Doesn't look like it in American culture, but how many people are changing where they are, right, Aaron?
Mm-hmm.
How many people can you pull yourself up out of poverty? Can you and I, Aaron, where we are financially, move up to the upper crust? Guess what? It's not happening unless you marry into it in some way. If you win the lottery, but guess what? I'm not holding my breath, right, Aaron? So
That's right.
just have people, just listeners, think about that for a second. It's kind of the metaphor I thought about, Aaron, when I was laying there processing this episode is I think a good metaphor, Aaron, might be like when you go to the bowling alley and they put the bumpers, up, you can do the ball and it can kind of bounce back and forth, your bowling ball, and it goes down. But it's kind of like us in our lives. You got bumpers up on either side, or we can kind of call them the rails. That's what Dr. Lakey talked about. You can appear like you feel like you're making some free will decisions, but ultimately your life is determined, okay, a lot of times by who you're born to and so on and so forth. Just something to think about. Here's a problem, though, right? Let's talk about it. A massive problem with determinism, right? And again, I'm thinking about May and Ocean, all this stuff too. The problem with determinism is it gives us excuses and humans for their poor negative behavior, hurtful. Well, it's not Aaron's fault. It's not Dave's fault that they ran over 15 people in a crowd. It's, they were born to bad parents and, they were eventually going to do that. Or, husbands, we cheated on our wives, but, that was determined because, genetically we were males and, that's what males do. So, Aaron and I and every male, whatever, we have an excuse for our bad behaviors. Females too, right? Or children. Well, we didn't do it because we're determined to do that. So I wanted to throw that out there. So there's a real problem with determinism, right? It's like this, get out of jail free card kind of thing. Now, let's move on. Let's talk about free will. What are some examples? Now, here's, right, Aaron, an example that has nothing to do whether you're upper crust, middle class, or you're living in poverty. Any of us can drive a car too fast, wreck your car, permanently damage yourself, or end the life of yourself or others. We can do that. I can get in a car after Aaron and I record right now, make a whole bunch of bad. I don't even have to have alcohol in me. Let me drive 100 miles an hour and see if anything bad happens, right? And boom, that's free will. There's no one telling me to do that. I can go out and do that and destroy my life very quickly. I can make good choices to help my life. Aaron and I have done that, and hopefully our listeners have too. And the other point to kind of support free will is that if determinism was the whole story, right, Aaron, we wouldn't have an education system per se, right? Your wife's a teacher. My dad's a teacher. Well, why would we do it? Why have environmental stuff to change things? And even I would say it about therapy. Why do therapy to help people change for the better if no, it's just determined? There doesn't matter what you do or say, Dave. It doesn't matter what teachers or professors do. It's just people are going to turn out the way they're going to turn out. So I hope that gets people thinking about this, that, I don't know. I think I've said it before. I think I probably went 10 years where I thought determinism was probably the case. Another 10 years where I thought free will was the case. Kind of going back and forth on it, Aaron, and hopefully our listeners can think about it. I think like many things in life, this one might be not an either or, but a both and. I see deterministic qualities in our lives, and I see free will as well. So again, just something to get people thinking. That's what this show has got me doing. This show's title is called Choice. Saul's choices, Indira's choices in this episode, Kalnaka, Torben, the coven and the decisions they make when the Jedi come there. So a big issue there. The other thing I was going to say with free will or determinism and choice, I would just simply reiterate something that Aaron has heard me talk about, and our listeners, is the issue of children making decisions in the prefrontal cortex, right? May and Osha are 8 in this, right? They refer back to that, and when all this goes down, and I've mentioned many times that Aaron is a parent, I'm a parent. There's a lot of decisions we make for our kids. Why? Because they don't have a fully developed brain. And it would be negligent of us as parents to not make some of these choices. I've mentioned it before, the prefrontal cortex historically is developed about 18, 19, 20. It allows a young male or female to see things from a more broad perspective. It gives us insight. We can see things from 360 degrees versus 180 degrees. This is what we want in all of our children as they grow up. And so, Leslie Headland has talked about a bit with Soule and Dara in this, and Dara's like, that's not a decision you get to make, and here's the witches, should Mother Anastasia listen to Osha and May and their decisions on this? Osha's decision, I want to be a Jedi and stuff like that. I tell you, it's my wife and I, we've been the prefrontal cortex for our kids. I have a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. We see things better, more fully than they do. So just keep that in mind. And with this whole thing about choices, not that adults make all good choices either. I just mentioned we can make bad ones, but there's definitely, for most of their life before they're 20 years old, we really want to help our kids with making decisions, making choices. I was going to stop there before I jump in the next one, just see if you had anything, Aaron, and maybe from the episode that you wanted to throw in, or not so. You tell me.
No, keep going, my brother. You are doing incredible.
Okay, so keep knocking this out.
I am soaking this up, my friend.
All right. No, I love it. So let's move on to the next one. Again, we can talk for hours on each of these subjects. Let's talk about ultimate truth or relativism, right? This series, again, Aaron mentioned it a minute ago, episode 3, episode 7, and it's not just them. It's stuff that Chimere says, stuff that we hear the Jedi say, Osha, May, all this. What is it? Even at the end of episode 5, they're, Osha and May are looking at each other and two very different points of view. So it really, this show hints at relativism, right? I get that, different perspectives and so on. There's the Jedi's point of view. There's the witch's point of view. And there's even differences between the Jedi, and there's even differences between Mother Anastasia and Mother Coral, right? Different views on what is right and wrong and so on and so forth. It was interesting that, like Aaron mentioned, we're recording this on the 17th, a day after the finale came out. And there's an article at StarWars.com titled "How the Acolyte Challenges How We See Some Members of the Jedi." And so what I did is I pulled a couple of quotes from that, because this is, obviously done after the last episode. I'm not going to talk about the 8th episode. We'll do that, in our next podcast episode. But let me throw a couple of quotes out here that Leslie Headland has that really points at these big issues that I'm talking about. And one quote, she quotes Mother Anastasia, this was from episode 3. It's really not about good or bad. It's about power and who's allowed to use it. Now, again, we could talk for 5-6 hours just on that subject, because I've said it before in my psychology corners. I understand that, I've had people say it, whether you have a faith background or not, most things on this planet come down to what? Power. Well, it comes down to sex and money, right? I get it. Whether you have a faith background like Aaron and me, or if you're atheistic, there's really not much disagreement there. But a lot of my female clients have said, David, you need to add another one. And here's Leslie Headland saying it's about power and what women have dealt with around this planet with a lack of power or less power than men. So that's a huge thing. But even though she has Mother Anastasia say it's really not about good or bad. In another quote, she says, the theme of the show of duality and reflection, she says, in essence, the good guys. So here she's bringing it back. It's not about good or bad, but okay, wait, it's about the good guys, the Jedi, have to admit the parts of them that are bad. And we see that in our Jedi, right? And she even says, I don't see the Jedi as the antagonists. I see them as flawed. And it was a story that I felt really excited to tell. So again, agreed. I like that. She doesn't necessarily see him as the antagonist. You can see this from a lot of different angles, but there's good and bad in people, and I don't know that anybody would disagree with that. We just look at yourself, the good and bad in you. So so let me start talking about this a little bit. Is there, even though this show really speaks to and pulls for a relativistic view, let's think about this for a second, okay? So I'm going to grab something. Where do I have it here? Oh, here it is. I looked this up before Aaron and I jumped on the call. 3 claims of moral relativism. Let me lay these out for our listeners. Morality is changeable, all right? It shifts with time, and there's no need to turn back. Morality is subjective, based on what we think and feel. We become the standard of measuring ourselves. Nothing good or bad. There is no good or bad, right? And we use these words a lot, but in moral relativism, there is no good or bad. You don't use those words. It just is. And then also morality is individual. It's true for me, but maybe not for you. Okay? So keep those in mind, right? So with those in mind, I think about, and I've presented this before, right, Aaron? I've asked many people, okay, it's 1942, it's 1943. You walk up to Auschwitz with me, right? Any of our listeners walk up to Auschwitz. You're looking. This is in Krakow, Poland. This is Auschwitz, okay? And you walk up and you see Nazi soldiers standing guard. Would you say to them, again, you're standing next to me without a gun, would you say that what they're doing was wrong or evil? Right? Good or bad? It's bad. What you're doing is bad. What you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is... Would you say it's right or good? Would you say it's wrong, evil? And what is your answer based on? Right? And I've asked that many times because, one of the things I've also shared on this podcast is me and a buddy of mine, we took a number of teenagers down to the Holocaust Museum in St. Pete. And I've mentioned this before. The docent who took us around did an excellent job. He was Jewish himself. He really, really did a great job educating our kids. And I remember coming around the corner and again, looking at they were taller. They were the size of Kalnaka, probably, upwards of 7 feet tall. And you could read each panel. There was 5 panels. And most of the time people think, well, Hitler and the Nazis just wanted to kill Jews. Well, there's 5 groups of people that Hitler wanted dead. His relative truth, I'm saying it's a relative truth, was if you're Jewish, if you are a gypsy, if you are physically handicapped, if you are mentally handicapped, okay, and if you're gay or lesbian, get in the gas chamber, okay? So his truth was, okay, and just like I read those to you, it's up to the individual. He's saying these 5 groups of people are bad. And I've always said, and this is my argument, again, if this causes cognitive dissonance in people, again, it's just think about it. If you go with moral relativism, look out. Yeah. Because you may end up in line. All right. So instead of there's 5 groups, now there's a 6th group. Because when you say to the Nazi soldiers what you're doing wrong, you're like, okay, well, this person standing with Dave Motters, both of them can come in and you're going in the gas chamber. Not because you're Jewish, not because you're a gypsy, not because you're physically or mentally handicapped or gay or lesbian. It's just we don't like you. Have fun with that, right? And so it's problematic, right? Now, let me share something. Let me add this on, and I got this out today, and I highlighted it. And this is C.S. Lewis, okay, talking about this issue of moral relativism or ultimate truth. Let me read this to you. This is C.S. Lewis, Oxford and Cambridge professor. I've always argued I think it's blatantly unfair how brilliant the guy is, but let me read this again, right? He says this, quote, "When you think about these differences between the morality of one people or another, do you think that the morality of one people is ever better or worse than that of another? Have any of the changes been improvements? If not, then of course there would never be any moral progress. Progress means not just changing, but changing for the better. If no set of moral ideas were truer or better than any other, there would be no sense in preferring civilized morality to savage morality, or Christian morality to Nazi morality. In fact, of course, we all do believe that some moralities are better than others. We do believe that some of the people who tried to change the moral ideas of their own age were what we would call reformers or pioneers, people who understood morality better than their neighbors did. Very well then. The moment you say that one set of moral ideas can be better than another, you are in fact measuring them both by a standard, saying that one of them conforms to the standard more nearly than the other. But the standard that measures those two things is something different from either. You are in fact comparing them both with some real morality and ultimate truth, admitting that there is such thing as a real right, independent of what people think, like Hitler. Okay, I added that. And that some people's ideas get nearer to the real right than others. Or put it this way, if your moral ideas can be truer and those of the Nazis less true, there must be something, some real morality for them to be true about. And so I'll stop there, and he gives some more examples and stuff. But that was staggering to me when I read that. Now, when you bring this up, guess what? Humans don't want to hear that, Aaron.
Of course not.
Right. You don't want to hear it. And even people of faith don't want to hear it. Atheists don't want to hear it. Don't tell me, Dave. No, I'm not. I've said it before. And even C.S. Lewis is saying it here. As humans, if you think you've got the market corner on truth, you don't. But he's arguing there is an ultimate standard. No one's fully there, right? And I think that's wonderful that he says that. And there's humility there. But I wanted to share all that to really get at this idea of, we can play around with this idea of relativism, and I get it. But ultimately, is there an ultimate truth? And so anyways, it's just some stuff to think about. I know I laid a lot out there, but those are some things that I wanted to talk about with ultimate truth, relativism, free will determinism, right and wrong, and so on and so forth. So hopefully, Aaron, that got our readers thinking just a little bit, right?
Maybe just a little.
Just a little bit. These are big, these are big issues. These are important things to talk about, right? And I love that Leslie Headland's series gets us talking about this. So anyways, let me stop there. I've talked enough. Thoughts that you have. I guess we can move over to what you're thinking.
Well said, my friend. Thank you for joining us for David's Psychology Corner. This was, I don't even know where to begin, my friend. That was incredible.
Yeah.
And you know what? Let's take a quick break.
Let's go to. We do need to.
I read the notes, and I still knew what was coming, and now that I've even heard it out loud, I just still can't wrap my head around it. Bear with us. We're going to get our thoughts composed. We will be right back with you. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here, and David just stole the show. Give the man an Emmy. He definitely took us to a new level with his breakdown of the psychological aspects of this episode. And I was sitting there going, yay for the High Republic.
Yeah.
But man, David, that was so deep and so thought-provoking, because it is so this series gets you thinking.
It does.
And if you really dig into it, it brings all these things to the surface, and you just laid it out beautifully for us. Incredible.
Well, I hope it helps people. And again, if there's things I said that people like, take it and keep it and use it. If there's things I've said you're like, nah, Dave's full of crap, then toss it. or right, Aaron. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've really thought this stuff through over 20, 30 years. I mean, you really need to, right? And what I love, and like I said, when some people, again, every podcast can do what they want. And there's times where I feel like, when I listen to other podcasts, I'm like, man, they're really good at looking at the story, what's good, what's bad, character, all that. And this series has been really up my alley because of, like what I just shared with you. It gets me thinking about all these things. It gets, like I said to you last Tuesday night, not yesterday, Tuesday. I just was laying there thinking about all this, and it was fun. And I really enjoy thinking about these issues, discussing these issues, seeing what other people think. Am I hitting the mark on this? Some of this stuff, am I wrong? I just like sharing it with people, and hopefully it gets them thinking, just like Leslie Headland's series has gotten us to think pretty deeply.
Well done. Well, you definitely have done that. No doubt about that. It is definitely the most thought-provoking episode we've probably done.
I think so.
For sure, dude. This is great. Yeah, I don't even know where to go from here because it's my mind is still reeling from all the information, and it's just
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's just and I love it because we write these notes out ahead of time, so I read all this ahead of time. But it's one thing when to read the notes, nothing to hear you expand on it, and it's just like, oh wow.
Yeah. And I think that's what's great. And not me being great, but this series, and it just really opens all this up. Again, you and I can, as a podcast, just talk about the story. What were the beats? What did we like about the flashback? What did we not like, et cetera? And again, I've listened to other podcasts, and they're way better than me. I'll point the finger at myself at looking at that. But like I said, one series really hits and one doesn't, but this one has really hit for me. And this is why, I was, you and I talked, and you said, yeah, let me just put out a little, kind of quick, kind of initial reactions to the episode, but we knew we wanted to do it. And you can see by what I explained, there's so much here to talk about. And so, it's, I thought, overall a wonderful episode, gave us more information, more detail, and it is something that, quite honestly, when I see this play out, I see it in families that I've worked with, the husband's point of view, the wife's point of view, the kid's point of view, and then it can get tough. Think about this: if you apply this issue of ultimate truth or relative truth. Aaron, to bring it out of the Star Wars galaxy and bring it back to our world and for our listeners, when you talk to law enforcement officers, if you ask PD, right, police officers, sheriff's deputies, you name it, what are the calls they least want to go to? Domestic violence stuff, family issues. Why? Because they get there and they got fingers pointing in each direction. He said, she said. Oh my Lord. I've done that marital work, man, and it is tough. And that's what you're seeing here in this episode, Choice. You're seeing Saul, right, to kind of really bring it back from what I was talking about. He's seeing from certain points of view how he feels like they're treating them and how he needs to protect them. And, it's hard because you do have these different perspectives. And, think about this, Aaron. I just thought about this as we're talking about this, about truth. Like sometimes they say, well, okay, if there's a video of what happened, then I'll believe it. Or if there's a video, Aaron and Dave, of this, I see the person, smashing and grabbing a necklace out of a store or whatever, then I'll believe it. And it's kind of funky because when you even watch a video, you'll see people have different perspectives on it, right? not just someone telling the story, but you have three people watching a video. Well, what do you see? And you get three different takes. This is what's difficult about the human experience, right? And that's what we're really, again, seeing in this flashback. These just differing perspectives and how there's some truth in both sides, right? And so then it makes it difficult, and who's right, who's wrong in this whole scenario, I'll say this. Can I say a nitpick about the story?
Go right ahead.
And I don't know what you thought about this, is, when Saul feels threatened by Mother Anastasia, she peels back and she's going ethereal, right? She's going into black mist. He stabs his lightsaber in there and it kills her. And I'm like, well, wait, okay. So I go back to Sabine, you and I've talked about this before, and you're ethereal. It seems to me like you could stick the lightsaber in and she's going to be fine, versus if she was corporeal, but someone else gets stuck with a lightsaber and they live. So just a nitpick, so does a lightsaber do it or not? Kalnaka gets a slice across the front of him. It looked like an open wound. Can't we close that up? Do some stitches. He did get impaled, but that killed him. Anyway, sorry. These are some of my story nitpicks. So I get when I listen to the other podcasts and when I hear them talk about some of the issues they have with this, I get it absolutely. But like I said, I'm just having a blast with this. I don't know. Any other thoughts about the flashback from you, or?
Well, you covered we covered the depth of the story so well. Actually, you covered the depth of the story so well from the psychological side, but there's still a lot of story that happened that was just incredible to see. I definitely want to talk about Kalnaka being possessed by the mothers or by the witches.
Yes.
And then turning on Torben and Saul and really giving them the what for. We get to see how Torben's injuries occur, because we see him in the first episode with the scar across, or the second episode with the scar across his eye. And we get to see how he got that finally, and it was from Kalnaka being possessed. And then, of course, Saul being tossed around like a rag doll. And if it wasn't for Indara showing up and using her superior knowledge and power in the Force to basically take Kalnaka back from the witches, it could have been tragic. But it ends up being tragic because the amount of force she has to use to save Kalnaka kills all the witches.
Right.
Which was absolutely stunning. And it makes you understand, by the end of this, seeing all the death and destruction that's happened, it makes you understand, and I don't know about for you, but for me, it made me understand why these Jedi made their choices that they made. For example, why Torben decided to take that vow and just basically sit in a trance for years on end.
Right.
Because basically everything that happened that night was because of him.
Right. He started this off to a large extent. Yes.
So he's bearing a ton of guilt. Then you have Kalnaka hiding away in the forest. Well, Kalnaka attacked his brothers.
Right. And he's a Jedi Knight.
And he's a
Jedi Master. Soul's a Jedi Knight. Torben's a Padawan. So he's controlled, and he's not even a Knight or a Padawan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So not only is he feel guilty for attacking those who were under him, because he is their superior being a master, he attacked his subordinates. He injured his subordinates, and it now has to live with that guilt of injury, but also is probably wrestling with the psychological aspects of, I'm not as strong as I thought I was because these group of witches just took my body over.
Right.
And so that definitely had to leave an unscalable mark on him, which is why I can understand why he would go into hiding.
Right.
So, but man, Kalnaka's a beast.
Oh, that scene was incredible. People wanted to see a Wookiee wielding a lightsaber, and that was really cool. Really cool.
It really was. I loved every minute of that scene, seeing Kalnaka just walk into the scene all nice and tall, then of course whip out his lightsaber, and he goes, I mean, the Wookiee jumps with the arms out, the growling. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
It's chilling. Chilling.
That's intimidating to see someone that size come at you, and the force at which you put up a block with your lightsaber and he is hammering your lightsaber. I mean, holy cow. When he had Torben up against that wall, that metal wall, oh my gosh. I thought his head, and
I was waiting for his head to explode.
oh my gosh. Because, you think about Chewbacca, you think about Wookiees, that we saw in Solo and, and all the other stuff, primarily Chewbacca and stuff. But man, Torben was in a bad spot, man. So that was interesting when you see Soul and Torben, like, no. They know this is bad. And I was really impressed with how they did that. I do wonder how much Jonas Suotamo did, how much they had maybe some other people inside. Stunt doubles, because most of these main characters have stunt doubles helping them. But anyway, I'm sure Jonas wanted to wield it at least some in those scenes. So.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, the next thing I really wanted to get into that I felt we really need to talk about is the ending scene where we have Indara and Saul and Torben is there as well, discussing what happens next. Osha is laying there unconscious on the med bed, and they're discussing, and Saul's like, I must go throw myself on the mercy of the council. And Dara's like, yeah, no, you're not doing that. Right. And they're like, well, what are we going to tell him? They're like, we're going to tell, and Dara's like, we're going to tell him, what happened. May started a fire. Everybody died. Which is technically true from a certain point of view.
Right.
So we're going all Obi-Wan storytelling on this. So, but then Saul's like, no, I got to face the council. And she's like, no, you, and I love how Indara just literally threw this back in Saul's face. It's like, you can't face the council and throw yourselves on the mercy, because it's not just you who will pay the price. That kid had lost everything. You're all she has. So you throw yourself on the mercy of the council, she's going to lose out. Mm-hmm. So this whole deception about what happened on Brendok is generated to save May or Osha.
Right.
And I find that intriguing. They're doing the technically it's a story of doing the wrong thing for the kind of the right reason.
Right. Or two wrongs make a right.
Do they though? So
yeah, right.
I mean, it's very interesting to see how the story played out and how we got to the point where we're at, because there is they hid everything that happened from the Jedi, and of course now and it makes me wonder if Ernestra Rowe actually knows.
Well, right. Yeah, no, it's right. It's unclear, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what all four of them hid. Because actually we learned, don't we, in one episode earlier that like she didn't know, because right, some stuff's revealed, and remember she gets frustrated or mad at Saul, like, wait, what? Yeah. I didn't know about all of this, or that there was another sister and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it always strikes me, Aaron, to piggyback off what you're saying, and I'm so glad you brought up this kind of ending thing, is just watching this unfold. Like I get why Indara does it, but I play out in my mind, well, okay, let's say they do what Saul says. Let me say what happened. they all have consequences. Indara, Soule, Kalnaka, Torben, and who knows? The Jedi might have taken care of Osha in a different way, in a better way. There's not to say that they wouldn't. It's not like, they couldn't come up with something. They're Jedi, and hopefully they'd come up with some good answers like, hey, we really need to help her. No, let's just let her go off into the galaxy by herself as an 8-year-old, whatever. But and then stuff is uncovered. It sees the light of day. When stuff is covered up, it just festers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think about here in this situation. Like, when, like in a wound, if it's festering, it just gets worse and worse and worse. But if you clean that wound out, then we can start to heal. So there's a number of different choice points, right, in this episode. The way that the Jedi react, the way that the witches act, particularly Coral, and then at this end scene, it's like, oh boy, I just had I was like, oh my gosh, this is going from bad to worse, and but yeah, it brings up all this stuff. What's right? What's wrong? What should they do? What should they not do?
Yeah.
And from there, yeah.
Absolutely, it does. So, but anything else you want to talk about before we go any further?
No, I'm really glad that you brought that up, that last scene. That's important to talk about. So, no, I'm good.
All right, perfect. Well, in that case, let's jump into final reactions here. We got some things to discuss there. I'll kick it off first. Final reactions for me. I enjoyed the episode thoroughly. I mean, and David, and of course having David's psychology episode tonight really enhanced my enjoyment of the episode, because it put into words everything I was thinking about the episode, because it is so deep, and the duality in the episode is just incredible. And just love the acting, love the music. Oh my gosh. I haven't even talked about any of the music at any point in any of these reviews, but the soundtrack has just been spectacular. So everything has just been top notch for this episode and for the whole series. I loved everything, and really has me revved up, ready to go into the finale and see what happens, which I know you already know, Dave, but when we're done, I'm watching it, and then I will know, and then I will probably start blowing everybody's cell phone up. But fantastic episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. How about you, my friend?
Well, like we mentioned, just by, I went from a psychology corner to a factoid minus one. Now, this was a psychology episode. I like how you said that. Just that statement by you shows, my thoughts on this and how much I love this episode, this series, and what it gets me thinking about. It's a joy to me to think about all these issues. It's not a burden. I don't want it to be a burden for people. A lot of times people will shy away from these big subjects, but I'm thankful that, again, Leslie Headland's writing, the other writers, that it's led to these kind of deep discussions. And I hope it gets our listeners thinking about these things in a deep way, and perhaps discussing these issues with other people in a calm, civilized way, and not to get mad about things. So again, this has been a joy to cover this series. I've said it before to you, Aaron, and I think even when we're recording, I have, no issue getting motivated to record. I want to, and I'm excited to record with you here in a bit, probably tomorrow, whatever, when we want to do it, episode 8. I'm so ready to cover that with you. Mm-hmm. So that shows, my feelings and, just kind of final reactions. Really enjoyed it. Just loved the interactions, like we said, Kelnock and all that, but those final scenes too, and seeing how this really went down and how this got really bad really fast. So very much enjoyed it. Can't wait to talk about the next episode with you. And Daz Davies, just know that when we do episode 8, I've already prepped the notes. I have a lot to talk about with the psychology of chimera, the stranger.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. So, of course, we want to hear from you and let us know your thoughts on choice and on the Acolyte. Carabas, the Acolyte. Let us know what you think. You can always hit us up on any of our social media. We're on Facebook and X at TA Harris. No, wait, that's my personal one, Carabas. Holy smokes, dude.
It's going downhill.
City Hall's burning. Woo, woo. Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog here. Let me get back on task. Yay! All right. So you can hit us up on Facebook or X at SW Reactions Pod. We are on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Blue Sky, Tumblr, Pinterest. I think that's it. All at SW Reactions. You can email us, swreactions@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail. You can do that as well at Carabas, speakpipe.com/Star Wars Reactions. Wow, I am having a ball tonight, my friend. Wow. I don't know what just happened.
That's okay.
So, Carabas. So, let's get that done. Well, I know we just had a psychology episode, David, but it's time for a psychology factoid. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you go to town.
All right. So last week we talked about 4 different types of psychedelics that are being used for treatment-resistant depression and treatment-resistant anxiety. So this week we're on part 3 of my coverage of these psychedelics. And like I mentioned last week, I wanted to talk a little bit about how these researchers that have been doing all this work believe psychedelics work. Okay, so here's kind of the layout. And again, this is a little factoid. It's not going to be that long, but just a little factoid. So first of all, just keep in mind that chronic stress, PTSD, and depression can damage brain circuits, especially in the prefrontal cortex. That's the last part of the brain to develop. It's right above your eyes and right behind your eyebrows, if you want to know where that is. And what research is showing is that these psychedelics promote neuron growth in that prefrontal cortex. All right. And it doesn't appear that psychedelics are rewiring the brain, but instead they seem to be repairing damaged circuitry. That is exciting news. And I hope this can be used by a lot of people. Another way to say this is that SSRIs, I've mentioned those quite a bit here, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and psychedelics both seem to be promoting structural neuroplasticity. But just like I mentioned last week, it might be the case that psychedelics may act even faster at promoting that structural neuroplasticity. Again, a lot more work has to be done, but at least it's being done. And I am hopeful that these can be added to what I've mentioned before: ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and other interventions that we are trying to get to people to help with these treatment-resistant conditions. So there's part 3. One more part to go next week. And if anybody has any questions, you can reach me two main places. The first one is Twitter X at David_Modders, MODDERS. Instagram, you can message me there, check out some of the pictures. That's just simply my name. And I guess the third one, I've been saying this, is just any of our socials. Aaron always checks them. And if someone sends something there and says, hey, send this on to David, Aaron would do that. And I could respond to you there.
Very good. Very good. For me, of course, you can hit me up on my X account, which I started to give you earlier at TA Harris 121079. If you hit up the show accounts, they will come to me, so I'll see those as well. So any of those will elicit a response from myself. And of course, you can always leave me the voicemail. I'd love to hear from you as well. But overall, that's the best way, is on Twitter X, as David would put it, and hit us up there. Well, my friend, it comes to an end.
I don't get a sense just yet.
No. We always have to do that one thing at the end. And are you ready for it?
Oh, I'm ready.
Well, and if you're new to the show, that one thing is ending the show with this week's Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week. Being you were on vacation last week, I picked this joke specifically for you, my friend.
Oh, nice.
So if you're ready, here is this week's dad joke. Why do droids go on vacation?
Ooh, why do droids? I don't know. Why do droids go on vacation?
To recharge their batteries.
It's so... Oh my gosh.
Did you recharge your batteries, David?
I did. Oh my gosh.
Oh my word. All right. Well, buddy, David, it's good to have you back, my friend. This has been a blast.
Absolutely. Loved it. Hope our listeners enjoyed it. Hopefully it gets them thinking. And we've got more to cover with episode 8.
Yes, we do. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go watch it now. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Y'all are awesome. We love you. Appreciate you. We're praying for y'all. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And like I said, each week, this is a year of kindness. Do something kind for somebody this week. I know it's been crazy out in that world this week, but a little bit of kindness will change somebody's day for the better, for not just them, but for you as well. So remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.